flavor. So that's what we're using today. Let me show you guys a quick trick on how to peel an apple. So this works for apples, potatoes, sort of anything. I'm just gonna drop that down. And what we do is take the top off, take the bottom off, and then you can really fly through apples. Apples, potatoes, and then just start top to bottom. That's it. In about 15, 16 seconds, you can have a fully peeled apple.
Nice.
Awesome.
Love blueberry pies, almost cherries, some of my favorites. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a strawberry rhubarb. If I'm picking a pie, it's probably going to be either chocolate, like chocolate whoopie pie, or strawberry rhubarb pies. They're my favorite.
Just trying to insert some math here for some people who want to know a little bit more about math. Of course, pi is a circle. Well, the pie that you're going to eat is a circle. So you are actually doing math pi in it. It's the circumference is 2 pi r, and pi r square is the area. And even the apple, it's almost circular, right? Yeah. So it's a sphere. So sphere is 4 pi r squared. That's the surface area.
So math is everywhere.
I love it. That's awesome. All right, so we're going to take our apple core, and then you can always kind of see in the core where you need to take out. There's that. I'm going to shut this light off for 1 second. There's that line in your apple that's going to tell you where the core is. The core is super important to the fruit because the core is actually the seed bed. So fruit is actually just the tree trying to replenish itself and grow more trees. And then we eat it because that's how it works. So you want to cut out that seed bed because it's not great eating. It's very fibrous, especially on the Granny Smith apple. And we just kind of take out the center. You can use a paring knife, take it out, round it off. And then you get that sort of quintessential pie, well, apple shape. So that's how you get those nice rounds. You cut it in quarters, and then from there, you just cut them in wedges. Okay? All right. So we're currently teaching online. So one of the phrases we like to use is through the magic of, because you guys are on my television right now. So through the magic of television, I have the rest of our apples ready to go.
Wow, that's a lot.
Well, we're making pie. We're going to make the 2 pies. And yeah. So it's roughly for a 9 to an 11-inch tart pie pan, you're going to use roughly 4 to 5 apples.
There's different types of apples. Which type? What kind of apples are good for making apple pies?
I like Granny Smiths because I like that green apple sort of flavor that they impart. They have great structure. They don't sort of cook away. You want to stay away from the softer apples that kind of don't have that same structure, that they kind of, when they cook, they just turn into like pulp or puree. Cortlands aren't very great for it. Macs are good. You want to stay away from like Pink Ladies and sort of those ones.
Nice. Good to know.
Okay, so we are going to make our filling. And so I've just put a knob of butter, so it's about 20, I think the recipe is 25 grams for 2 pies worth. And that'll just give you a little bit of richness in your dough. We're going to add our brown sugar. That gives you a little that caramel note. It'll help it get that nice color. A little bit of white sugar. Oh, nutmeg. If you're using pre-ground spices, just make sure you kind of give them the old thumb. So when they're in the container, after you weigh them in the bowl or wherever, just squeeze them with your thumb, just so they break up. Because the last thing you want to do is bite in and get like a big chunk of nutmeg. Pecan pies are great, although the older I get, the less tolerance I have for real sweet things. I'm with you. I love pecan pies. I think they're one of the best pies, but I'm in the South. I used to be in the South a lot in the U.S. And I just find that like sometimes that like sweet tea and like pie is more than I can handle for sugar. All right, so I'm gonna sprinkle in my cinnamon. I'm actually just gonna run really quick to the main kitchen and grab a bigger bowl because I really want to toss these well. Now I'm locked out. So I have all the doors closed. Okay, so this is it's always a great idea to have a really big bowl when you're doing this. Oh, there's also lemon juice in with the apples. So the ones that I had pre-cut, I had them tossed in a little bit of lemon juice. So we have everything in here. And the last thing, what we're gonna do, we're gonna give these a good mix. Bonus points if anybody knows, we've added our sugar. Does anybody know what this is called? The step of like sitting fruit in sugar that's gonna produce a liquid? Bonus points if anybody gets it.
Well, I don't know. I just call it marinating, but.
So if we were to add, you can add like a little bit of brandy or a little bit of rum, make it really nice. It's called macerating. So we're gonna macerate our apples. And you just wanna give them a good toss, okay? Because what's gonna happen is that sugar is gonna start to pull out some of the moisture in the apples. And you can see everything's already starting to get really wet, okay? So one of the things that's gonna give us that really nice, thick, gooey apple classic texture is a little bit of cornstarch. So what we're gonna do again, give it the old in the container. Just gonna sprinkle that around. And then we're gonna toss this as well. All right. All right, that looks pretty good. So from here, you can grab our offset spatula and just sort of mix that around. I like to let this sit for a little bit. That's why we're doing it now. So we're also gonna just make sure, you don't have to really mix that butter in. It's gonna mix in on its own, but you wanna kind of break it into a couple pieces in case it was a little colder when you started. Okay, like that. So we're just gonna set this off to the side and let that sit. All right. Ooh. I need to grab one thing that I forgot to grab before. Sorry, I forgot to grab the pan spray for the panel. Yeah, sorry. All right, any questions so far, guys?
No, how long are we macerating it for, the apples?
So we're gonna macerate, great question. So we're just gonna macerate it as long as it takes to roll out our dough.
Okay.
That's sort of it doesn't need to sit for too long. But I like to do it just kind of let it sit. And you're also gonna see, so I'll show you this now. If you dump it forward, there's a little bit of juice, but not a whole lot. So the longer it sits, the sort of more juice you'll get out of it. You don't want to let it sit too long because your apples will start to break down. They don't need to sit in there for too long. All right. So we are now going to start to roll out our pie dough. So we have our dough now. I have what we call bench flour, and bench flour is just a little bit of flour. I use pastry because it's here. It doesn't really matter. But the only reason we use this flour is so that it doesn't stick. Our pies don't stick to the table, or our dough doesn't stick to the table. Okay? It can be any flour you want. Doesn't really matter. So we're gonna start. The only thing you don't want to see is you don't want to see it clump up. So if you get a little bit too much on there, you can always sort of just brush it off. But I want you guys to see that how big the chunks of butter are in this. Can you guys see that? Like you can visibly see butter in this dough. Okay. There we go. Sorry. Just for the sake of time, I pulled a different dough that we had in the freezer just to be able to make it. So we want to show you a finished product. And my so again, we're gonna start. We start as round as possible because if you start round, you can finish round. If you start square, finishing round always seems to be a bit of a challenge. Okay. One way, two. And another thing too, so when you're rolling out your pie, I see a lot of people who sit there and bang the pie, and you don't really want to, you just want to give it enough pressure so it spreads. And you want to press it evenly. Sometimes if you don't, you want to use even the handles, or you're doing like a little, trying to be a little bit more gentle. This roller, I don't exactly love this rolling pin. I forgot my rolling pin at home. I have a, basically it looks like this, just here, there's no handles on it, but it's tapered. It's really nice, I love it. But you just can, so you don't even need the handles, roll it out. And one of the things you can tell that your pie dough is at the right temperature, when you pull your pie dough out of the fridge, it's really, really cold. So a great technique is to let it sit out for about 10 minutes. And that'll just kind of allow it to warm up a little bit. If you see your dough, when you're rolling it out and your corners are breaking, so, and your corners are breaking and it kind of, it's doing that, then that's a pretty good indication that your dough is not ready to roll out. It's too cold. So let that dough sit at room temperature for a little bit. Okay. About the right thickness we're looking for. Now, we're going to take our pie pan. We're going to drop that in the middle. We have roughly about an inch. So we need to cover this diameter all the way around. It looks pretty good. I'm just going to roughly trim this side here so it's dramatically too large. But other than that, it looks pretty good.
So we have a question here. What is the ideal thickness for the pie crust, and does it vary for bottom or top, etc.?
It doesn't really vary for bottom or top. What varies in your pie thickness is what type of pie are you making. So if you're making a pie that would require a blind bake, I usually go a bit thicker because the pie is a little bit easier to work with. But because we're cooking an apple pie where we're going to set both layers and then put it in, I like to go sort of about 1/4 of an inch. I hope that, yeah. Okay. So when we go to put our pie dough in, I've sprayed out my pie pan. I'm just going to take this guy, scrape off the table. And there's no real, like, you can totally have all that flour on your table. Did my camera just go really blurry?
Yes.
Better. Mildly better.
Yeah.
Perfect. Sorry, I don't know what happened there. All right, so I'm going to take my dough here and I'm going to fold my dough in half. Not aggressively, I'm just going to fold it because it's a little easier to work. And then I'm going to lay my dough in right on that center line. And what would be the center? I'm going to push it in like that, okay? Now, I'm going to set the bottom of my pie first. One thing I always see people is trying to set the sides. You want to set the bottom first, okay? And then go and set your sides. Now, there's a couple of different ways you can do your pie based on how you like pie dough. I like dough. I'm a dough person. I think you can have amazing dough and a mediocre filling and have a good pie. But I think if you have bad dough and the world's best filling, it's still a bad pie.